Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt that the person reflected there was no longer you? That the marks on your body told a story you'd rather erase, forget, bury forever? Marcus Johnson lived this every day. And we're not talking about a passing dissatisfaction or a difficult moment. We're talking about a man who literally could no longer recognize his own face. Third-degree burns covered half his face and stretched down his arms like a cruel map of pain and survival. Every time Marcus passed the mirror in the living room of his small house in Oklahoma City, he looked away, not by chance, not out of distraction, but because seeing that image was like reliving, second by second, the hell he had been through. And the worst part, he didn't see a survivor, he saw a monster. For 3 long years, Marcus locked himself away, literally. He refused visits from friends who insisted on seeing him. He ignored invitations from family for dinners, parties, casual get-togethers. When someone took out their cell phone to take a picture, he vanished. He disappeared like a shadow. The social life he once had, that confident soldier, full of dreams, who served his country with pride, simply evaporated. In its place remained an invisible man, hidden between 4 walls, carrying a weight that no one saw, but that crushed every breath. Have you ever felt like that? As if your very existence were a burden? As if the world would be better off without you there, taking up space, consuming air? Marcus felt that way, and worse, he believed it. But then, on an ordinary Tuesday in October, the phone rang. Marcus almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers always brought demands for payment, unwanted offers, or worse, people wanting to help. And he didn't want help. He didn't want pity. He didn't want to be just another recovery project for someone. But something that day, maybe boredom, maybe fate, made him press the green button. On the other end of the line, a female voice, firm but gentle. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Boston Children's Hospital. She went straight to the point without beating around the bush. Mr. Johnson, I know we don't know each other, but I found your case in the Veterans Program medical records, and I desperately need your help. I have a patient here, an 8-year-old boy who is giving up. He suffered severe burns and refuses to continue treatment. He needs to see that life goes on. He needs hope, and his scars could save his life. Marcus fell silent. Those words echoed like thunder inside his chest. His scars, those horrible marks which he covered with long sleeves even in the 40-degree heat of an Oklahoma summer. Those same scars that made him avoid any human contact, saving someone. Stay with me until the end, because what happened after that connection isn't just about Marcus. It's about how the pain we carry, the pain we hide, the pain that shames us, the pain that paralyzes us, can be precisely the key that unlocks the door to transformation for another person. It's about discovering that our worst wounds can become our greatest strength. Marcus didn't know it at the time, but that phone call was about to reveal something that would change not only the life of a child in Boston, but the very meaning of his existence. And the question that kept nagging at him for days was the same one that might be on yours now. How could something so painful, so destructive, have any purpose? What you are about to discover may surprise you. And it is precisely here that I need to pause for a moment and speak directly to you, the viewer. Because Marcus's story, this transformation that is beginning to unfold, it's not just his. It resonates within each of us in different ways. And I truly know, that while you're listening to talk about his scars, you might be thinking about your own, the ones no one sees, the ones you carry in silence. If this topic resonates with you, if you've ever felt like Marcus, invisible, marked, afraid of being seen, I want to ask you something. Leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. It can be a word, a phrase, a feeling. You don't have to tell your whole story if you don't want to, but share with me what's resonating inside you. Because you know what happens when you do that. You create a chain of empathy. Someone who is feeling alone will read your comment and realize, I'm not the only one. And that, believe me, can be the beginning of someone else's transformation. And if you're enjoying this kind of content, these real stories of lives transformed by pain and courage, leave a like now. It seems like a small gesture, I know, but it's what shows YouTube that this video needs to reach more people. People who, like Marcus once was, are on the verge of giving up and just need a spark of hope. Your like is literally a vote that stories like this matter. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button now and activate the bell. Because every week I bring stories like this, real, unfiltered stories about ordinary people who have gone through extraordinary situations and found light in the most unlikely place. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of message. You're not just a number, you're part of a community that believes our wounds can become our strength. Now that you're here with me, let's go back to Marcus and find out what happened after that phone call that changed everything. Because the story is only just beginning, and what comes next will show you how a man who hid from the world for 3 years found the courage to do something he never imagined possible. Show more 2106. To fully understand what that phone call meant to Marcus, we need to go back in time. We need to understand the hell that shaped those scars, and more importantly, the invisible hell they created within him. Because the hidden truth about trauma isn't just in the marks you can see, it's in the ones no one can see. It was June 2011. Marcus Johnson was 26 years old and in his second year of service in Afghanistan. He was a corporal in the United States Army, part of a patrol unit in Helmand Province, one of the most dangerous regions in the country. On that particular day, the mission was routine, at least by the standards of what routine meant there. Checking a route, ensuring it was safe for supply trains to pass. Marcus was in the third vehicle of a line of 5 Humvees. The sun beat down, the heat was unbearable, and dust clung to everything. Another day, he thought. Just one more day. But that would not be just another day. The IED, improvised explosive device, was buried on the side of the road. Nobody saw it. Nobody could see it. When Marcus's Humvee passed directly over the detonation point, the world exploded. Literally. The explosion was so violent that it threw the 2-ton armored vehicle 3 meters into the air. The metal twisted like paper. The heat of the explosion, above 1,000 degrees Celsius, turned everything into instant hell. Marcus was in the right back seat. The explosion came from his side. The impact threw him against the roof of the vehicle, and when he fell, he was on fire. His combat gear, designed to withstand fire, melted onto his skin in seconds. He screamed. He screamed with a strength he didn't know he possessed. Other soldiers dragged him out of the burning vehicle, rolled him on the ground to extinguish the flames, but the damage was already done. 60% of Marcus's body was burned. His face, neck, chest, arms, second and third degree burns covered such extensive areas that the military paramedics, when they arrived, looked at each other with that expression no one wants to see: doubt. Doubt about whether he would survive the next 30 minutes. But Marcus survived. He was evacuated to Bagram Air Force Base, then to the military hospital in Landstuhl, Germany, and finally to the Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. 17 surgeries in 9 months, skin grafts, infections that nearly killed him 3 times, pain so intense that morphine felt like water, and through it all, one question hammered in his head: why did I survive? When Marcus was finally discharged from the hospital and returned to Oklahoma City in March 2012, he was no longer the same person. And I'm not just talking about the physical scars. The transformation that had taken place inside him was even more devastating. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man reflected. The face that was once symmetrical, that smiled easily, that kissed his fiancée Jessica without a second thought. That face no longer existed. In its place was wrinkled, reddened skin, stretched at strange angles. One eye slightly drooped, his mouth pulled to the side where the skin had been most damaged. He looked, in his own words, like a melted wax doll. Depression came on quickly. It wasn't gradual. It was like falling off a cliff. Marcus began refusing to leave the house. At first, his family understood. "He needs time," they said. But weeks turned into months, months turned into a year, and Marcus remained locked away. He would wake up late, spend the day watching TV without really paying attention, eat something when the hunger became unbearable, and go back to bed. His medication for physical pain was accompanied by antidepressants. He took everything like a robot, without questioning, without expecting improvement, just swallowing pills and waiting for the day to end. Social isolation was a conscious decision on his part. Friends tried to visit. He made up excuses. Family insisted on taking him to dinners, gatherings, events. He refused, always. When someone took out their cell phone to take a picture at some family gathering he was forced to attend, Marcus simply disappeared. He went to the bathroom, went outside, anything to avoid being in the photo. Because he knew that later people would look at that photo and whisper, "My God, what happened to him? Poor thing. How awful." And Marcus couldn't bear the pity. He preferred invisibility. The painful truth Marcus carried was this: he didn't die in that explosion in Afghanistan, but he stopped living in Oklahoma City. He was a ghost, occupying space, breathing, eating, sleeping, but not living. And the worst part, he believed he deserved it. He believed that perhaps it would have been better to have died in that explosion. At least it would have been quick. At least he wouldn't have to carry that weight every day. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened in the following years wasn't just about Marcus's physical scars. It was about all the doors that slammed shut in his face, all the rejections, all the no's that confirmed what he already believed about himself, that he no longer had a place in the world. Marcus tried. He really tried. In 2013, after a lot of pressure from his family and the therapists in the veterans program, he decided he needed to work. He needed purpose. He needed to feel like he was still useful. So he started looking for a job. And this is where his journey became even more brutal. The first interview was at a hardware store. The manager looked at him, trying to hide his shock, but Marcus saw it. He saw the gaze quickly shift. He saw the discomfort. The interview lasted 7 minutes. "We'll get in touch." They never did. Second attempt, a salesperson at a car dealership. The owner was more direct. "Look, Marcus, your resume is good, but we work with the public. You have to think about the customer experience." Marcus understood perfectly what that meant. You scare people. Third, fourth, fifth attempt. Supermarket, restaurant, gas station. The answer was always the same, only the way of saying it changed. Some companies didn't even call for an interview after seeing the photo he had to send. Others invented flimsy excuses. "The position was filled yesterday. We need someone with more experience. We'll keep your resume here." Polite lies, rejections disguised as professionalism. Marcus tried for 14 different jobs in 8 months. 14, and he was rejected from all of them. Each no was another brick in the wall he was building around himself. Each look of pity, each poorly disguised expression of horror, each awkward silence, everything confirmed the narrative echoing in his head. "You're no longer good for anything. You're a burden. You scare people. Better to stay hidden." And then came the most devastating blow of all. Jessica, the woman he had loved since high school, the woman who had promised to wait for him to return from the war, the woman who visited him in the hospital in San Antonio and held his hand while he screamed in pain during dressing changes. Jessica, who one day looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "I tried, Marcus, I swear I tried, but I can't. I can't look at you and see the man I loved. It's not your fault, it's mine. I'm weak, but I can't marry you." That broke something inside Marcus that no explosion had ever managed to break, because burns he could understand. Physical pain he could endure, but being rejected by the person who swore to love him under any circumstances, that was a different kind of wound. One that no surgery, skin graft, or medication could heal. Marcus stopped trying after that. He simply gave up. He thought, what was the point of surviving? What for? To live locked up, to be rejected, to see the fear in people's eyes. I was more useful dead. At least I would be remembered as a hero. Now I'm remembered as this. These were the phrases that went through his head in an endless loop. Self-destructive decisions began to make sense. Skipping meals because why eat? Stopping taking his medication because why prolong it? His family insisted on helping, but he pushed everyone away. His mother knocked on the door. He pretended he wasn't home. His father called. He let it go to voicemail. He became a voluntary prisoner of his own home, counting the days without knowing what awaited him. And it was precisely at that point, at rock bottom, that the phone rang on that Tuesday in October 2014. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Boston Children's Hospital. A call that Marcus almost didn't answer. A call that would change absolutely everything. Dr. Sarah Mitchell wasn't one to take no for an answer easily. She had nearly 20 years of experience treating children with severe burns, and she'd seen it all. But Tommy was different. The 8-year-old boy had suffered second and third-degree burns over 40% of his body after a short circuit caused a fire in his family's home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was in his room when it happened. He tried to get out, but the flames blocked the door. He was trapped for almost 3 minutes before firefighters rescued him. 3 minutes that changed his life forever. Tommy had been in treatment for 4 months. Skin grafts, physical therapy, occupational therapy. But in the last few weeks, he had begun to refuse everything. He didn't want to do the exercises anymore. He didn't want his dressings changed. He screamed when the nurses approached. He cried and said he wanted to die. An 8-year-old boy saying he wanted to die. Dr. Mitchell had seen this before. The hopelessness that comes when a child looks in the mirror and can't process what they see. But with Tommy, there was something deeper. He had stopped talking. Literally, he spent his days hiding under the sheet, refusing eye contact, refusing the world. The medical team tried everything: child psychologists, trauma therapists, support groups with other burned children. Nothing worked. And it was during a team meeting, when everyone was out of ideas, that someone suggested, what if he knew an adult who had gone through this, someone who survived and is doing well? Dr. Mitchell clung to that idea like someone clinging to a buoy in the middle of the ocean. She began searching the Veterans Program records, looking for survivors of severe burns who were close enough to perhaps pay a visit. And that's how she found the case of Marcus Johnson. Veteran, Oklahoma City. Burns on 60% of his body. Survived. She didn't know about the depression. She didn't know about the isolation. She didn't know Marcus was as broken as Tommy. She only saw it in the records, survivor. And she thought, he can help. When Marcus answered the phone and heard Dr. Mitchell's proposal, his first reaction was almost to laugh at the absurd irony of the situation. She wanted him, he who couldn't look in the mirror without feeling disgusted, to be an inspiration to a child. She wanted him, who had been rejected 14 times because of his appearance, to show a boy that life goes on. The answer was immediate. No. I'm sorry, doctor, but you called the wrong person. I'm not an example of anything. I'm a wreck. Look, I understand you want to help this boy, but I'm not the right person. Find someone else. And Marcus was about to switch off. He was going back to the couch, back to the TV, back to the emptiness, but Dr. Mitchell said something that made him stop. "Marcus, I don't need you to be cured. I don't need you to have overcome everything. I don't need you to be a perfect example of recovery. I just need you to be alive and willing to show this boy that it's possible to go on. Because right now, at this very moment, he doesn't believe it. And if you don't, he might give up completely." There was something in those words, something that poked at a part of Marcus that he thought had died. Maybe it was the brutal honesty. Maybe it was the fact that she wasn't asking him to pretend to be okay. She was just asking him to be present, alive, real. Marcus was silent for long seconds, and then, almost not believing he was saying it, he replied, "One visit, just one. And if I realize it's not helping, I'll leave." Dr. Mitchell agreed immediately. "One visit, that's all I'm asking." Marcus hung up the phone and stood there in the room. What had he just done? Had he agreed to fly to Boston, go into a hospital, and expose himself to a child he didn't even know? More than that, expose himself on purpose, intentionally show his scars. The idea was absurd. It was terrifying. And yet, for the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something other than emptiness. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was curiosity. A small spark of, what if it made a difference? What if he could do one thing right after so many mistakes? What if his scars, which he hated with every fiber of his being, could have some purpose? 3 days later, Marcus was on a plane bound for Boston. He wore a hooded sweatshirt, even inside the heated airport. He kept his head down. He avoided eye contact. When she arrived at Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Mitchell met him at the entrance. She was a woman in her 50s, with grey hair pulled back in a bun, and kind but determined eyes. She shook Marcus's hand firmly and said, "Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy." Marcus simply nodded. As they walked down the hospital corridors toward Tommy's room, the doctor explained the situation in more detail. The boy wasn't speaking. He wasn't eating properly. He was losing weight. His parents were desperate. "I don't know if this will work, Marcus, but I needed to try." Marcus swallowed hard. The pressure was immense. What if he failed? What if he made everything worse? They stopped in front of the door to room 304. Dr. Mitchell placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder and said softly, "Just be yourself, that's all." And then she opened the door. The room was typical of a children's hospital. Colorful walls, cartoons on TV, toys scattered on a shelf. But Tommy wasn't seeing any of that. He was lying in bed, completely covered by a white sheet, only the top of his head visible. His parents sat in chairs beside him, their expressions of exhaustion and despair. They looked at Marcus when he entered, and he saw the familiar reaction, the quick shock, the averted gaze, the discomfort. But this time something was different. They also had hope in their eyes. Dr. Mitchell introduced Marcus. "Tommy, there's someone here who really wants to meet you." No response. The sheet didn't move. Marcus stood there, unsure what to do. He looked at the doctor. She made an encouraging gesture. Then Marcus took a step forward, then another. He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. And in a voice he hadn't used to speak to anyone in years, he said, "Hey, champ, my name is Marcus." Nothing, just the soft beep, beep, beep of the medical monitors. Marcus continued, "I know you don't want to talk right now. That's okay. I didn't want to talk for a while either." He paused, took a deep breath, and then made a decision, something he swore he would never do, something that went against every instinct of self-preservation he had. Marcus took off his sweatshirt, he took off his shirt, and he stood there, sitting beside the bed of a boy hidden under a sheet, his torso completely exposed, the scars all over his body, his chest, his arms, his neck, everything on display. "Tommy, can I show you something?" Marcus asked gently. There was a pause, and then, very slowly, the sheet moved, just a few inches, enough for a pair of eyes to appear, children's eyes, frightened, curious, and then they widened when they saw Marcus's scars. Marcus pointed to his own chest. This is 3 years old. It happened when I was in Afghanistan. An explosion. It burned me pretty badly, more or less like what happened to you. He paused, letting it sink in. And you know what I learned in these 3 years? Tommy didn't answer, but the sheet lowered a few more inches. Now half of the boy's face was visible. Marcus saw the burns. He saw the scars Tommy carried, and he saw, most importantly, the fear in his eyes. I learned that a scar isn't the end of the story, Tommy. It's proof that you survived the hardest chapter. Marcus touched one of the scars on his own arm. Each of these marks reminds me of a day I thought I wasn't going to survive. But I did, and so did you. And what does that make you, champ? Weak? No, it makes you incredibly strong. The sheet fell completely off. Tommy sat up in bed, his eyes fixed on Marcus, and then, for the first time in weeks, the boy spoke. His voice was small, hesitant. Does it hurt? Marcus nodded. Yes, it hurts. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it still hurts, but it gets better. Every day it gets a little better. Ooh, are people afraid of you? Tommy asked, and there was so much fear in that question that Marcus felt his heart clench. He could have lied. He could have said no, that everyone is nice, that nobody cares about looks. But he had promised himself to be real, to be honest. Yes, he replied. Some people stay, some people look and don't know how to react, and that's hard. But you know what's harder? Hiding. Because when you hide, you stop living, and life is too good to waste hiding. Tommy looked at his own hands, at the bandages covering his arms. I'm ugly now. And it was at that moment that Marcus felt tears burning his eyes, because he knew that pain. He knew that phrase. He had said it to himself 1,000 times. He leaned closer, looking into Tommy's eyes. You're not ugly, Tommy. You're brave. And these marks, they're your medals of courage. One day you'll look at them and remember, I went through something most people can't even imagine, and I won. Tommy hesitantly reached out and touched the scars on Marcus's arm. It was a gentle, curious, childlike touch. And Marcus, for the first time in 3 years, didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He didn't feel ashamed, because at that moment, he wasn't seeing a monster reflected in Tommy's eyes. He was seeing what Dr. Mitchell had seen when she called him a survivor, a warrior. They talked for over an hour. Marcus told stories from Afghanistan, the good parts, the camaraderie, the light-hearted moments amidst the chaos. Tommy spoke about the fire, about the fear, about how he still had nightmares. Tommy's parents wept silently in the corner of the room, watching their son finally open up after weeks of silence. Dr. Mitchell had tears in her eyes too. When Marcus finally got up to leave, Tommy asked, "Are you coming back?" And Marcus, without thinking twice, replied, "I'll go, I promise." And he came back. Not just once. Marcus returned 5 times in the following weeks. With each visit, Tommy was a little more open, a little more willing to do physical therapy, a little more hopeful. But what Marcus didn't expect, what took him completely by surprise, was the impact it was having on him. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus had a purpose. He woke up each morning with a reason. When Tommy made progress in physical therapy and sent Marcus a photo on his cell phone, showing that he had managed to bend his arm a little more, Marcus smiled. He truly smiled. And when Tommy asked about Marcus's scars with genuine curiosity, without fear, without disgust, just with a desire to understand, Marcus realized something fundamental. That boy didn't see a monster. He saw a warrior. He saw someone who had survived. He saw hope. And if Tommy could see this, Could other people see it too? Had Marcus spent 3 years in hiding, not because people saw him as a monster, but because he saw himself that way? The transformation was mutual. Marcus was helping Tommy, but Tommy was saving Marcus, and neither of them fully knew it yet. After 6 weeks, Tommy was discharged from the hospital. On the day he left, he hugged Marcus tightly. "Thank you for showing me that I can be strong," he said. And Marcus, with a choked voice, replied, "Thank you for showing me the same thing, champ." Marcus returned to Oklahoma City a different person. Not healed, not completely transformed, but different. A seed had been planted. An idea was growing. What if he could do this for other children? What if his scars, which he hated so much, could actually serve a greater purpose? In 2015, Marcus founded Scars of Hope, a non-profit organization that connects war veterans with severe burns to recovering children across the country. The mission was simple yet powerful: to show these children that life goes on, that scars are not the end of the story, and that there is strength in survival. It started small. Marcus and 3 other veterans. They visited hospitals in Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. They sat with burned children and shared their stories. They showed their scars. They answered questions. They cried together. They laughed together. And slowly, hospital by hospital, child by child, they began to make a real impact. Stories spread. Mothers posted on social media about how a veteran's visit changed their child's perspective. Doctors recommended the program. Other veterans began volunteering. In 2017, Scars of Hope was operating in 8 states. In 2019, in 15. Today, the organization has impacted more than 2,300 lives. Children who were giving up found a reason to continue, and veterans who were lost found purpose. Marcus now travels the country, sharing his story in schools, hospitals, and military events. He no longer hides his scars. In fact, he displays them, because they are no longer his prison, they are his credential. "My scars were what kept me locked up at home," he says. "Today, they give me the authority to say, I know what you're going through, and I'm here to tell you that it's worth continuing." But the story Marcus most enjoys telling isn't about numbers or statistical impact. It's about mindset transformation. Because this entire journey, from that explosion in Afghanistan to founding an organization that transforms lives, wasn't just about helping children. It was about him understanding a truth that had been hidden all along. The pain you carry might be exactly what someone needs to see in order not to give up. Think about it for a second. How many times have you hidden your struggles because you were ashamed? How many times have you pretended to be okay when you were broken? How many times have you thought, "Nobody wants to hear about my problems"? But what if someone needs to hear about your problems? What if your invisible battle is the compass that can guide someone else to the right path? It's not about physical scars. It's about the marks we all carry. Childhood traumas, abusive relationships, professional failures, addictions, losses, rejections. Each of us has scars. The only difference is that some are visible and others are not. But they all have the same power. They can be prisons or they can be bridges. Marcus discovered this in the most painful way possible. He spent 3 years seeing his scars as prisons, as evidence that he no longer had a place in the world, as a reason to hide. But when he finally had the courage to transform them into bridges, to use them to connect with Tommy, to show that survival is possible, everything changed. Not just for Tommy, for him too. And that's the universal lesson this story teaches us. Your battles aren't just yours. They can be the beacon illuminating the path for someone lost in the same darkness you've already traversed. In 2024, 10 years after that first visit to the hospital in Boston, something incredible happened. Marcus received an invitation in the mail, thick paper, gold lettering. It was from Tommy's family. The boy, now 18, was graduating from high school, and he wanted Marcus to be there. Marcus took a flight to Massachusetts. When he arrived at the school gymnasium where the ceremony would take place, he searched for Tommy in the crowd of graduates. And then he saw him, a tall, confident young man with visible scars on his neck and hands, wearing his blue cap and gown with pride. Tommy saw Marcus and ran to him. They hugged tightly, like old friends, like warriors who had fought the same battle. During the ceremony, Tommy was called to the stage to give a speech. He was the class valedictorian. Marcus didn't know this. When Tommy took the microphone and began to speak, Marcus felt his heart race. "When I was 8 years old," Tommy began, "I went through the worst time of my life. A fire left me burned and broken, and I wanted to give up. Honestly, I wanted to die." The audience fell silent. Parents held their children's hands. Teachers had tears in their eyes. But then a man appeared, a war veteran named Marcus Johnson, and he showed me his scars worse than mine. And you know what he said? He said that scars aren't the end of the story. They're proof that you survived the hardest chapter. Tommy paused, looking directly at Marcus in the audience. "This man taught me that scars are victory tattoos. They're medals you earn for not giving up. And because of him, I'm here today. Because of him, I chose to live. I chose to fight. I chose to believe that my story didn't end in that fire. In fact, it only just began." The audience erupted in applause. Marcus was openly crying. He couldn't believe it. That frightened boy who used to hide under a sheet was now on stage, inspiring hundreds of people, sharing his story without fear, without shame. After the ceremony, while everyone was taking pictures and celebrating, Tommy pulled Marcus aside to a quieter corner. "I need to tell you something," Tommy began. "That day in the hospital you think you saved my life. And you did. But I've realized something these past few years. I saved yours too, didn't I?" Marcus smiled through his tears. "Yes, Tommy, you saved us." "So we're even," Tommy said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it firmly, and then Tommy pulled him into another hug. "Thank you for transforming your pain into hope. Thank you for showing me that scars can be beautiful when you understand what they represent." Marcus returned to Oklahoma City that night with a full heart. And for the first time in 13 years, since that explosion in Afghanistan, he looked in the mirror and didn't see a monster. He didn't see ruin. He saw exactly what Tommy had seen 10 years ago. A warrior, a survivor. Someone who transformed the worst thing that ever happened to him into the best thing he could do for the world. "I thought I had lost everything in that war," Marcus said in a recent interview. "I thought the explosion had stolen my life, my future, my identity. But the truth, I found my purpose in the ashes. I found my mission in the scars. And I discovered that sometimes you need to be broken to rebuild yourself stronger. You need to hit rock bottom to understand that there's still ground beneath your feet, and that you can use that ground to propel yourself upward." Comment below. Scars are tattoos of victory, if this story touched you in any way. Look, if you've made it this far to this final moment with me, I know that Marcus's story touched you in some way. And maybe it touched you because you saw yourself in it. Maybe you also carry scars, visible or invisible, that seem to define you negatively. Maybe you're struggling to find purpose amidst the pain. And if that's the case, I want you to know your story isn't over. Just like Marcus's wasn't over that day he answered the phone. This channel exists precisely for that reason, to bring you real stories of ordinary people who have gone through extraordinary situations and found strength where no one expected it. Every week, I bring you a new video with stories that will make you see life in a different way. So if you're not subscribed yet, click the subscribe button now, because you deserve this kind of content in your life. Content that's not just entertainment, but that truly transforms the way you see your own struggles. And leave a comment here. I'm with you until the end. So I know you really watched until the end and that this message resonated with you. This helps me understand that I'm on the right track, bringing you the stories you need to hear. Oh, and leave a like too. It's not just a button, it's you saying this story mattered, this content made a difference, and that not only fuels the channel, but also gives me the certainty that it's worth continuing to bring these stories to you. There's a video over here about another soldier who returned from the war transformed, but in a way you won't believe. Click and continue with me there. The journey doesn't end here. See you in the next video, warrior.